Well, what my niece said, this says, we've seen wars, we've hidden, from bombing for years and years. He says, but as a shock, nobody's ever seen anything like it, from the sound and like the earthquake feeling is what they got. They thought it was an earthquake to start out with. My nephew, my brother's son, was taking care of his 6-year-old son at St. George Hospital with the chemotherapy when the explosion happened. And unfortunately, the impact of the explosion, which the hospital is less than a mile away from the explosion, it lifted my nephew off his feet and shot him across the room. Luckily, it protected his son from getting hurt any worse, except he suffered the damage with a broken arm and a broken rib and a damaged foot. I have a niece, and she lives the closest to the explosion site, and she lost her house completely simply because the windows collapsed, the doors and hinges and the windows, the glass broke, but also the frames, just as if it wasn't there. And luckily she was hurt a little bit, nothing, serious. And then I have 3 nephews, 2 of them lost their home the same way. And the other one lost half of his house.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Have a good day.
You too.
I was born and raised in southern Lebanon, right on the Lebanese-Israeli border, and in a small Christian town. We moved to Beirut in 1965. At that time, I was in 6th grade, and I went through the 11th grade in Beirut. Then I had an aunt who's now deceased that lived in Anadarko, Oklahoma. She's my second mother, and she was married to her first cousin. They didn't have any kids, so they devoted their life to educate nephews and nieces. I was the youngest of 6 nephews they brought to this country, and they sent us to high school and to college, and some of them to medical school. Me and his dad actually started together working as dishwashers at Eddie's Steakhouse. And his dad didn't stay very long. I stayed, and a few weeks later I became a busboy and then became a waiter and made a good living out of, for a college kid. Graduated from college, and I went to work for a meat company that's out of Colorado, learned a little bit about the meats. Then from there I went to Big Ed Hamburgers and learned how to cook a hamburger or 2. Then I went on my own. That's where Richie started. Richie started actually in 1980. Took a little closed cafe on 1411 North Classen, and for 3 years it was fun. I basically did some basic food within the Lebanese food, and I kept getting bigger and bigger till I was fortunate to be help with the help of Mr. Clay Bennett, that had just bought this building, and I was able to convince him that he needs a family-style operation here. And he said, "When can you do it?" I said, "The sooner the better." And 6 weeks later, Richie's Downtown was born. This is my nephew, Michael Haddad, who I love to death, and he's actually more experienced in the culinary world. I am not a chef. He's a chef, and he has his own menu ideas that he added to Richie's, and it came on really nice. But he kept everything the way it was. We haven't changed a thing.
I call Richard Moorad my uncle because my father and Uncle Richard were best friends.
We were inseparable.
Yeah, and to add to the mix, his brother Tony. And Uncle Tony and Uncle Richard, they always had coffee shops and restaurants. And on Saturday mornings, we used to go to the restaurants because we had to take inventory and go to Sam's. And that was like my favorite thing ever to do. Even when I was 11 years old, I was like, I could do this one day. And I never imagined that where I was in my life that this opportunity would come to fruition.
Yeah.
We always kind of played around that one day I will have a place. I never thought that he'd be calling me that day and saying, hey, it's time. And when it's time, it's me taking over Richie's Grill. It's an honor that he would have picked me. There's so many people out there that would love to take over this spot. You know, with the clientele that is already built and the reputation. I walked in and it was just instant flow. It made sense to take over Richie's Grill because I didn't have to have a startup. And anyone starting a restaurant, they got a long road.